Hello and welcome to the US Presidential Election Show, episode 16. It's great to be back. Welcome to all our regular viewers, whether you're watching now live or watching a bit later. Welcome to you all. And in particular, of course, welcome back to the in-house US politics expert at LP Brussels, Ryan Hunter. Welcome back, Ryan.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here.
Well, I don't think we expected necessarily to have episode 16, but as we know, the US election continues, and I know you're going to help me and our viewers talking us through step by step what is going on, what do we expect next, and are we going to have a US president installed on Inauguration Day? So maybe, Ryan, it would really help perhaps to start at the beginning. Where are we now in the process, and what is the next key deadline?
Well, those are all fantastic questions, and just, amazingly, everything is currently on schedule based on the key dates that are need to be remembered every election. So what's happening right now is we've had the actual election, the counting has finished, and now you're in the process where every county in every state is certifying, confirming their results, which then go to the various secretaries of state to then certify the statewide results, and then then the state results get certified. There are various deadlines for the states. For example, Georgia's deadline is today, and despite the fact that they've done a manual recount, which concluded yesterday, which didn't change the fact that Joe Biden was winning, they're still on track to meet that deadline to certify the results today. Then next week, on the 23rd of November, you have Michigan and Pennsylvania, their deadlines for certifying their results. And then, next week, more states certify. And following Michigan and Pennsylvania, the next key date is December 1st, when Nevada and Wisconsin certify their results. And by that stage, you're I think that they might be the final two states to certify. At that stage, the key date for everyone to remember will be the 8th of December, and that is the deadline for any certification to take place, whether states are late on what they're expecting to certify, or for whatever reason, legal challenges and whatnot. This is the deadline. Following the 8th of December, the governors have to send the certified results to Congress, along with all the names of the electors, in the Electoral College that will eventually pick the president based on the results in their state.
Okay, well, thank you for really making it very clear, step by step, what the process is up until that 8th of December deadline. But maybe let's go back and go through each of those steps, if we may, because I guess at each step there could be further legal challenges. There's various hurdles that still need to be overcome. So let's take Georgia. They demanded a recount. There were obviously serious allegations made. The recount took place, and I think 3 counties did identify ballots that hadn't been included. So that, to some extent, does it not justify at least some of Trump's concerns that not all votes had been counted? But overall, they didn't make much difference, but they've been put in now. But some of the Republicans are arguing, but you didn't revalidate the non-in-person voting, the postal voting that came in. I mean, on that point, Ryan, do you want to clarify that? I mean, they voted by hand, not by machine, but the Republicans are still arguing and disputing these mail-in ballots. What is the situation there on the mail-in ballots?
Well, speaking as a matter of fact, there doesn't seem to be anything there except for perpetuating this belief amongst the Republican Party that mail-in ballots have attached to them a much higher degree of fraud than in-person voting, and that therefore a lot of these mail-in ballots should not be counted, especially, to their mind, any of the ballots that arrived after Election Day. Now, as we've covered on the show, most of the states, all the states, had rules in place for the election that as long as the voters sent in by mail their ballot by election day, not that it has to arrive by election day, but that it has been posted by election day, it can be counted on the days after, right? The latest example would have been perhaps North Carolina, that said they were accepting ballots up until the 12th of November, so last week. Now, no more states are receiving ballots. That's done, but it's just, you know, this continuous push to cast doubt on the mail-in ballots. Now, in Georgia, as you raised the specific example, they've done the manual recount, didn't change anything. There's still the option of requesting a machine recount, but the margin that we're dealing with is so wide that it's beyond the realms of what a recount can change. And to that extent, nothing they can do except for throwing away loads of votes will change the outcome of the way the state voted.
Yeah. And I understand in the case of Georgia, their legal cases have also been exhausted now. They have no further legal cases pending in Georgia. So the next step now is that those overseeing the vote have to certify the vote. And there presumably is a possibility that Trump supporters could try and block the certification. And then it goes to the governor, who is a Republican. And there's been a lot of tweets from the president, the outgoing president, if I can put him like that at the moment, putting pressure on the governor not to certify the results from Georgia. So talk us through that, Ryan. I mean, is that what is going on, and is that a plausible option that those validating the votes, or indeed the governor, could refuse to certify?
Well, I mean, that is, as a matter of fact, yes, it is a threat, of course. But for the purpose of this point, it's worth separating, the congressional party from the local party, just for the sake of this part, in the sense that locally, the Republican officials have not been as keen as the congressional Republicans in Washington, D.C. to cast doubt on this result. And we've seen the same thing with there's more governors that have accepted the result than Republicans in Washington. So, although the Republicans like Donald Trump and the ones in Washington are louder, we shouldn't confuse them with local officials who will be the ones to certify the results, who, even in the case of Michigan, where the Republicans on the board of one of the biggest counties, were trying to block the certification. They, in the end, it was certified after they overturned their position, and they haven't launched any legal challenge to change that fact. So, a few of them are crying foul, but legally speaking, they're losing all over the place, and it does seem very unlikely for a governor to decide to go against the way the state went. No matter how close they are to Trump, it's a bit of a suicidal move for a future election.
And you can't see the governor. I mean, one option, not likely, I know, is to flip the result and actually send Trump supporters as your state's electors. You think that's a pretty dangerous path to go down?
It's a very dangerous path to go down, and a lot of states, you have in the past had electors going on behalf of states that went rogue. We call them faithless electors, going against the way the state went. And because of that risk in the system, all states, to my mind, maybe a couple do not, have laws that prevent this, either through a fine, through maybe even harsher punishment. And yes, we've had electors going rogue in the past, but nowhere near enough to make a difference in the Electoral College. And the states that Trump needs to change have some of them have harsher rules against this. And it's just, it seems supremely unlikely for a governor to look at what's happened in his or her state and say, there's too much doubt here. I'm gonna go against what the voters said. no matter how much wrath they incur from Donald Trump himself, that would seemingly kill their chances to stay as governor in the next election cycle.
Yeah. And indeed, let's continue through the journey, but just pause at the moment whilst we're on Georgia, because I guess, ironically, perhaps the deadline, I think, to certify is today. The governor has to certify today. And of course, the whole spotlight is on Georgia because you have a runoff election for the Senate. So it really does matter what happens there. And I guess if the governor of Georgia, the Republican governor of Georgia, chooses to ignore the will of the people of Georgia, whose votes have just been recounted in a recount, that has serious political repercussions for the standing of the Republicans, I guess, in that runoff election. So that's presumably a very important consideration, not just in his mind, but presumably the Republican Party, that this battle could cost them, ironically, their chance to keep their majority in the Senate.
Yes, it would be an argument in the campaign that I don't think it would benefit from if the governor would go against the way that Georgian people were voting, and it's very tenuous ground what they're arguing. Not in Georgia because we haven't had any Senate results from Georgia because of the runoffs, but in other states, Republicans are casting doubt on the votes for the president, and yet accepting the votes that they took for the Senate races, right? So it's a weird logical imbalance there. For Georgia, it's interesting to have two Senate races open in the state at the same time. This only really happens if through resignation, someone's died in office and whatnot. You have a special election, so you have two seats open, and those two seats are going to also determine the Senate majority. So all spotlights now on Georgia, all the money you've seen for the last 2 years in the election, all coming to one state for two races, which will be held on January 5th. And if you've been keeping track of the calendar, that is just 2 weeks before Joe Biden gets inaugurated, and the results of those races could really drastically change Joe Biden's plans and could change the way the country looks for the next 2 years.
Indeed, it's something we've covered before, but maybe just remind the viewers how many of those two seats that are up for the runoff do the Democrats need to win to flip the Senate from Republican to Democrat? Do they need to win one or both of them?
They have to win both. And they have to win both just to have a 50-50 split in the Senate, at which point the future vice president, Kamala Harris, is the tiebreaker of Senate votes. Now, they would flip the majority. It would be a very, very fragile majority. They really could never afford to lose any votes in the Senate. So it wouldn't be comfortable at all. But the difference between that versus the Republicans keeping the majority is huge. We've covered on this show before, the Senate is the gateway to a party's agenda. There's a whole host of things that Joe Biden could get done with the Democratic Senate, and a lot of things that the Senate under Mitch McConnell, current Senate Majority Leader, can block. So it's very important for both parties to these two races. It's very unlikely the Democrats win both, but as we saw in this cycle, Georgia surprised many. Maybe they surprise many more.
Indeed. Well, thank you for that analysis on Georgia in particular. Just moving along the calendar, if we may, assuming Georgia certifies, which you think is pretty likely. The other states are likely to do so, but I think in Michigan there may be still there's still disputes hanging around. But overall, some of these states have Democrat governors, for example, and therefore, in the end, I think under the law, the Democrat governors will just step in, like in Pennsylvania, I believe, and certify the result. That is within their powers. So I guess this stage of Trump's legal challenges are likely to fizzle out. Is that a good characterization?
Well, I'll give you a number which shows the way things are going. There have been 33 major post-election legal cases. Of those 33, the Trump campaign has won 2 and have lost 31. So If that's any indication of the way things are going, it doesn't take. You have to wonder, to overturn an election result, you need more than 2 victories out of 33 cases, especially given the margins in some of these states. However, had the margins been tighter, it's not hard to imagine that what the Trump campaign's trying to do might have been more successful. That's true. So we need to recognize the fact that the margins for Joe Biden are really playing into this atmosphere where the Trump campaign is really fighting an uphill battle. It's tough to justify throwing out so many votes to overturn a result, even though they have found some inconsistencies, like maybe a handful here and there. Certainly not enough to overturn a result, nor cast doubt on what are big margins.
Yep. Because I think even in Nevada and Arizona, obviously we'll be discussing Georgia and Pennsylvania. In the end, these majorities came in to be quite significant. It wasn't just the few hundred votes that you had the dispute between Bush and Gore in Florida. Here we're talking about thousands of votes, in some cases tens of thousands of votes. Pennsylvania now, I think, is a very significant margin for Biden. So over the last couple of weeks, actually, the size of the Biden victory is quite significant. Is that?
I mean, Pennsylvania right now is 70,000. I think I don't know the exact Michigan lead, but it's 14 times the size that Trump won it by 4 years ago. So quite hefty. Yeah. And Wisconsin is tighter, certainly, but it's still not tight enough for any recount to change the outcome. And so
there's been some speculation, if I may, Ryan, I mean, about the motives of Trump's campaign. I mean, looking at the legal challenge to demonstrate that there were unlawful activities in the election, and as you say, that's been largely unsuccessful. There's the political pressure of trying to flip the result at state level. As you say, that's unlikely to be successful and actually could backfire in Georgia in particular in relation to the Senate runoffs. But there's a third theory as well, that actually this is a deliberate long-term strategy to not undermine democracy, as maybe the Democrats are claiming, although that may or may not be the case, but to delegitimize a Biden administration from day one. So the day he's in office, Trump would have felt vindicated because he will arrive with a cloud of doubt and uncertainty, whether justified or not. And most people are saying it's unjustified. But nonetheless, is that not Trump's game plan to undermine Biden? So he's easy pickings in 2 years' time for the midterms, and in particular 4 years' time when Trump can say, well, actually, I'm not a loser, I'm back.
Well, I was going to say I'll venture you a fourth reason why they're doing this, and exactly that, 2024. If you can undermine Joe Biden to such an extent that he will never really be fully accepted by the Republican Party as president, you give yourself an easier path for 4 years' time. But also there is a very clear alternative reason, and that is that these legal challenges are a huge money-making scheme for the party. It's you're tapping into an anger, you're tapping into doubt. You're sending emails to your supporters saying, look, don't let the election be taken from you. Help us today. Give us X amount of money. And there are reasons for fostering all this anger that go beyond just the immediate reason for the cases, right? As you've laid out. I think that we're looking at a combination of your three reasons and the fourth I've just raised. And the picture for me looks like, how can we undermine the Biden presidency? Can we set enough fires that, he can't get anything done? And can we lay the groundwork for a strong midterm in 2 years and potentially a strong challenge in 4 for the presidency? And if you look at it from a political perspective, it's harder to say that it's been such a failure as the legal side, mainly because we won't see really the consequences of this on the U.S. system for a couple of months, if not years. We need to reserve judgment on that. But the legal side of things is not looking very good. That's quite clear. On the political side, hard to say.
Yeah, and I guess because it is perplexing, puzzling, and maybe frustrating for Biden supporters that Biden, of course, is not taking any legal action. I think he used the phrase yesterday that he's neither including the option or excluding it. But I guess he doesn't want to, particularly in the way you've just portrayed it. He doesn't want to fan those flames, which is what I guess Trump wants. Trump wants a fight, a legal fight, a political fight. Anything to keep this these doubts in the minds of his supporters, to keep raising the money, keep raising the level of anger. So do you think that lies behind Biden's reluctance to play the legal game and just stay pretty statesmanlike, if you like, in the way he's reacting to Trump's antics?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of Biden's allies would have also shared a frustration that perhaps he's trying to be too presidential in this moment. And some of his comments, he's becoming increasingly dismissive of President Trump as the weeks have gone on. I would agree that he's very afraid to launch legal challenges or to stoop down to the same level. Just a fear of keeping Donald Trump relevant beyond his presidency. And also, there's still a lack of comfort. People are uncomfortable with legally pursuing political opponents and whether this should be happening in a democracy. There was a lot of outcry when the Republicans tried to continue pursuing Hillary Clinton, even after she lost the race, with the Democrats with the shoes on their feet, whether they want to start pursuing Donald Trump legally. It's questionable. I don't think there's a consensus on that. A lot of voices would be pushing for yes, but some are worried about what kind of precedent it sets if you start legally pursuing your political opponents.
And therefore, bring us right forward. These hurdles you think will be overcome. That the legal case really hasn't got many more avenues to go down. The politics will fizzle out in the end. The electors will turn up and do the right thing and reflect the views of their voters. And we're then going to get to Inauguration Day. And you're pretty confident that Biden is arriving in the White House, because I think the thing many of us can't envisage, we can't believe we are going to see Donald Trump leave that White House before Inauguration Day. But you're telling us it's absolutely pretty damn certain that we will see a car cavalcade with Trump and his luggage leaving the White House before Inauguration Day.
Yes, I will admit that it doesn't look like it from afar, but the institutions are holding. The certification process hasn't been derailed. It's quite on schedule, despite threats of recounts and legal challenges. But the fact that legal challenges haven't amounted to anything shows the system is holding, right? The institutions are holding. Politics side is quite different. The Republicans publicly saying things different to what they're saying privately. That's a problem. Yeah. So I'm quite confident that Joe Biden will be president come January 20th. What I'm more worried about is some of the long-term damage that is being incurred, right? The system will hold, but at what cost to the system, right?
Yep.
Will we see repercussions of this in 2 years' time, in 4 years' time? What will it mean? What kind of precedent is being set here? And what kind of Republican Party are we going to see post-Trump? There's a lot of questions that cannot be answered in the immediacy of the election, nor before Inauguration Day. But we need to see how they deal with President Biden, and if some of the other questions I've raised about the damage to the system, whether those will be justified or whether we're worrying about nothing. I suspect there will be some damage. There's always a cost to these things down the line, and I just don't think that Republicans have factored that in yet.
Yep, indeed, because I guess this doesn't just delegitimize a Biden presidency; it's delegitimizing the American presidential election system and indeed the presidency itself. And of course, you should always be careful that you don't reap what you sow. And I guess the Republicans could suffer from that 2 down the line, and that therefore it is toxic perhaps for American democracy, but also, and I want to come on to this stability, that Europe has up until recent years seen America not just as a reliable partner. You could argue and characterize America as a reliable prop to support, but actually be the security guarantee for Europe, both in military terms, but also in intelligence terms. This is something we've discussed before in previous episodes, but has been a reliable partner to the WTO, the WHO, the UN over the years. The rules-based system, you could argue, has been created by Europe and America working hand in hand. I think the trust now, the reliance that America will be a reliable partner, is surely now broken, Ryan, and therefore, and this is something I'm sure we'll be exploring in future episodes, that the alliance will never be the same again. This has really shaken to the roots, not just American democracy, but the ability really for Europeans to trust America as a reliable partner.
Yeah, it's opened the Pandora's box of European autonomy. Trump has been a lot of things for the international system. He's been provocative. He's been a destroyer. He's been, whatever word you want to throw. But for some of the European leaders, they would have referred to him as a useful fool, right? In the sense that he's been very useful to push their agenda, pushing for a stronger Europe, a more autonomous Europe, and not having Europe stuck in the middle of a U.S.-China conflict in which they have no stance and no mechanism to make their voice heard. And so you'll see this fight being fought between two major EU states in Germany and France. Certainly, Germany maybe looking to go back to the way things were. France saying, no, but we've moved on from the way things were. There's a new way now, and we think it's a European way. So we should follow that very closely, because I'm afraid that a Joe Biden presidency carries with it, for some, the false promise of a return to the way things were. That might be the case domestically in the US, but on the foreign policy side, so much has happened in 4 years. So many things have been broken. So many norms have been trampled. You cannot just go back to the way things were. The US has to do more, has to show more, has to put in the work to fix some of its relations. We're talking about, potentially the biggest sudden change in US to world relations since Obama took over from Bush, right? The last time the US relations were this bad was when the Bush presidency was over. And even then, they were not as bad as they are now. So I think that the US, if they're expecting to jump right back into the way things were, it's not going to happen. The EU is trying to move on, if not having already moved on, policy-wise. So we should follow this quite closely for the next few months to see if there's any tensions that come from that disconnect. And also internally to the EU, between Germany and France and other member states, what should the EU do in response to a Biden administration?
Yep, indeed, as you say, the French and the Germans have already begun the debate about European sovereignty and security, in particular, and reliance upon the US. But I guess this also affects two other subjects that I know we want to focus on in future shows: trade and the environment, in particular the Green Deal. These are some subjects we're going to come back to, and I guess. Once the EU has clarity on its own budget, these issues of trade and, of course, the Green Deal will dominate 2021. In addition to the COVID-19 pandemic. But just maybe by way of conclusion, Ryan, for those trying to follow this in the next few days, next week or so, just a few tips. What should we be looking out for to address concerns that maybe Trump has he's still got cards that he's holding on to that he's going to play. What are the signs that we should be looking for that will vindicate, will underpin, will demonstrate your view that Trump is running out of steam, the inauguration will go ahead, and that Biden will indeed be the 46th president? So what is it we should be looking out for in the next few days?
Well, for everyone's mental health, I think the first thing to do is to unfollow Donald Trump on Twitter. That will give everyone a lot of reassurance there. But more seriously, in terms of dates and milestones, certainly next week's certification, Michigan and Pennsylvania. Today's one. Sorry, going back. Today is Georgia. Monday we have Michigan and Pennsylvania. December 1st you have Wisconsin, Arizona. Those are important milestones. But really, in terms of at what point do the election results become insulated from legal challenge, you're looking at the 8th of December as the most important milestone. That's the final deadline for all the states to certify. Okay. At that point, you are at a stage in the process where legal challenges will do nothing for you. They have a protection from those challenges. Then you move on to December 14th, which is when the electors will choose Joe Biden, and then in early January, Congress has to formally certify what the electors have agreed to. That's a formality at that stage. So there are 3 dates, but really 2. The 2 most important ones: the 8th of December and the 14th of December. At that point, I'm sure everyone will join me in being confident of a Joe Biden presidency. Between now and the 8th of December, there will be a lot of noise about the results and the certification process. I don't expect those to be derailed, maybe slightly delayed due to legal challenges and recounts. But by the 8th of December and by the 14th, we'll have a lot more clarity than we have today.
Okay, well, thank you, Ryan, for being very clear about what dates we should put in our diary, the days we should be looking at Twitter, and what days we shouldn't be, indeed who we should be following and who we shouldn't be following. So thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you'll be able to join us next week on the show, Ryan, to give us an update on how things are going, because some of those important milestones will have taken place by then, and we can perhaps do a deep dive into some of those other issues that you've mentioned, particularly in terms of the impact on European policy. But in the meantime, I invite our viewers, thank you very much incidentally for joining the show once again, to like the show, to tell us what you think, put questions to us for the next show, to share, to subscribe if you're on YouTube, and don't forget to ring that notification bell. So thanks so much, Ryan. Thanks to everyone else. I look forward to joining you all next week for the US presidential election show. Thank you.
Thank you.